Hi everyone, Clint Edmondson from Microsoft. In this screencast we're going to talk about capturing business workflows using activity diagrams. Just a refresher on our client, if you've been following along in the screencast series, they're Tailspin Toys. They're a small brick and mortar hobby shop that sells model airplanes, and they're looking for an online storefront to supplement their in-store sales. A few brief words about activity diagrams. First of all, they're considered by many to be the next generation of flowcharts. They're used to show processes such as business processes, workflows, and algorithms. And they're a great complement to use cases. They allow you to show task flow instead of task structure. And now let's switch over to Visual Studio and capture some business workflows using activity diagrams. Here you can see the analysis model we've been building in the screencast series, and it's starting to get a little bit busy. So the first thing I'm going to do here is add a new subfolder to our project, and we'll call that shopping. And we're going to start moving our analysis artifacts related to shopping into this subfolder. Let's go ahead and move the orders model since that's definitely strictly related to shopping. I'm going to keep the others at the root of our solution for now since they deal with high-level concepts. Before we dive into our first activity diagram, let's pop open the customer use case diagram and kind of refresh our memory. If you remember, we have a browse for toys, view toy details, add toy to shopping cart, and checkout. That sounds like a good set of workflows to model using an activity diagram. So let's go into our shopping subfolder, right click on it, say add new item. We're going to choose activity diagram. We will call it browse toys. There we go. Now we've got a nice tool palette over here for our activity diagram. And let's kick it off with an initial node. This is always the first node you show in an activity diagram, and this identifies where the activity begins. Our first action, after reviewing some of the use case notes that our actor might perform, will be choose a category for the toys. From there, they might decide to view a toy's details. If they really like it, they would probably add it to their shopping cart. And when they're done, they're probably going to want to check out. And that would complete this activity. So let's zoom out a little bit. Notice up in the corner I can spread this out a little bit. So let's clean this up and start drawing some connectors. So let's double click on here. Connect these all together. Hit escape. Can line these up a little bit better. I'm not going to go crazy with this. We can always clean it up when we're done. Now that's ideal scenario. They would come in, choose one category, choose one toy, add it to a shopping cart and check out. Well, most likely they would probably add more than one toy. So what we need to do is introduce a decision node. So that would happen probably right here after they add it to the shopping cart. Let's go ahead and delete that connector back off and stick in a decision node right there. And this decision node is going to have connectors coming from the toy cart out to checkout, and then one additional connector. So if they decided to browse for more toys, they would probably go back to another category. We can show that here. Let's pull this over to the side. Drag it down. So notice it's not quite on the corner. We can move it down like that. Now let's give this branch a name. In activity diagram terminology, that's called a guard. We will call this one shop for more toys. And the one flowing out, we will call that done shopping. Right, not too bad. Now after discussing this with our client, they had a ton of more information around how they wanted checkout to work. So let's go ahead and add another activity diagram and call that one checkout. We'll again start with an initial node, and our conversation with our client, here's the steps they said they wanted their users to be able to perform. Review cart contents, provide payment, details, whether they're going to use MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, or some other form of payment. Provide their shipping details, where they wanted the product shipped to. Confirm the purchase. And finally, view a receipt. Line these up. We'll zoom out just a little bit because we need a final node in here. So let's drag a final node in here to close out this activity. And once again, we will connect them all with connectors. All right, escape. And according to our client, this looks pretty good, and this is what they had in mind, so we'll call this one done. One thing we can do with activity diagrams is reference them from each other. So why don't we go back to our first browse toys, and you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this checkout and replace it with a call behavior action. We'll give it the same name, checkout, but this one we will tell that behavior to call our checkout activity diagram. The model automatically picked up on that. So notice it shows this new little fork icon in the corner that indicates that this is actually calling out to another activity. And we'll add our connectors back in. Since I deleted that, let's go ahead and put the guard back in. Call it done shopping. And I think at this point we're done. This is a very quick tutorial. Okay, we'll switch back over to our slide deck. So some tips for working with activity diagrams. First of all, you want to use them to capture and validate business processes, ideally discussing them with your clients. Again, these are next generation flowcharts, so they should be familiar to many clients, and they are fairly easy to read as long as you stick to domain terminology. Think in terms of the user's actions. The primary entity on these diagrams are the action nodes, and those should follow naturally along the lines of actions that your potential users will be performing. Focus on actions that are visible from outside the system. Remember, we're not trying to solve the problem yet, merely to describe what the problem is. You can use these diagrams to show flow of actions that span multiple use cases, as we did in our diagram examples. And it's ideally the best diagram for showing parallel operations. I didn't get into parallel operations in this screencast because I didn't want to create an artificial example that didn't relate to our problem at hand, but they are absolutely perfect for showing parallel activities. In each diagram, focus on one and only one activity, and remember the rule of 12 I mentioned earlier in the screencast series. A diagram should have no more than 12 elements. Any more than that and it starts to get too busy to really understand on one screen. I've got some great references for you. UML2 and the unified process, UML distilled, and use case modeling. All three of these have excellent chapters covering the ins and outs of activity diagrams and go into much more detail than I did here. And finally, some resources. All of the models you've seen in this screencast series have been created with Visual Studio 2010 Ultimate. You can download it at the link provided here. You can also visit the Visual Studio Architecture Team's blog at blogs.mstn.com/vsarch. And you can stop by my blog to pick up all these materials, both the solution file as well as the slide decks. And I'm at www.notsotrivial.net. Thanks for tuning in.